Welcome to Module 4, where we move into advanced Claude tools, including Deep Research and Claude Cowork. Deep Research is not a magic button. It's a specific tool for a specific job. And when it fits, it saves hours. When it doesn't fit, it just wastes time and tokens. This lesson is all about knowing the difference. Let's start with what Deep Research actually is. In Claude, it's a feature that runs multi-step, source-cited research on a topic. The distinction matters. Regular Claude chat draws on Claude's training data, with maybe a little bit of internet search thrown in. Deep Research actually goes out and finds lots of current information on the topic. Instead of you asking one question and Claude answering from what it learned, Deep Research searches the web in real time, reads multiple sources, synthesizes the information, and cites where every single piece came from. Now, that takes longer than a normal chat response. Sometimes 5 to 15 minutes depending on the topic. And it produces a structured report rather than conversational text. That difference in time and format is the trade-off. You get currency in citations, you lose speed. Now, why does this matter for Treasury? Well, it matters because the financial world moves fast. A credit rating can change. Regulatory guidance gets updated. Fed policy shifts. Market conditions that were true last month aren't true this month. Any research that depends on current information is a candidate for Deep Research. Any research that depends on your training data alone becomes stale. Now, let's be concrete about when you'd actually use this in your Treasury work. Counterparty credit research is the clearest example. Say you're considering a new banking relationship for one of your reserve accounts. Before your CFO approves the relationship, your Treasury team needs a credit summary. You need current ratings. You need recent news. You need any regulatory actions or compliance issues. A junior analyst would spend 2 to 4 hours pulling this together. They'd check Moody's, they'd search for recent press releases, they'd read the latest 10Q or 10K filings if it's in the US. They'd look for any SEC actions or enforcement. Deep Research does all of that in a fraction of the time. The output still needs human review before you use it. You're reviewing a draft, not building from scratch, but the draft is structured and sourced. Market condition summaries are another clear fit. Before your investment committee meets, you want to know what actually happened with money market rates, treasury yields, or credit spreads in the last month. You need current data, not data from a training set. Deep Research pulls together that current picture. It synthesizes what's changed. It gives you a starting point for the conversation. Regulatory update briefings work the same way. Something changed in SEC money market rules? There's new guidance on deposit limits? You need to know what changed and what it means for your policy. Deep Research can find and summarize the relevant changes. Again, you validate it, but you're validating, not building from zero. Benchmarking your investment policy is slightly different but still relevant. You want to know how your IPS compares to what peer companies are doing. Are you being too restrictive? Are you missing best practices? Deep Research can serve as public examples and recent benchmarking guidance. You get context for a policy conversation. Now, let's be equally clear about what Deep Research is not for. Your daily liquidity report, that's Module 1, prompting work with your own data. Deep Research doesn't have access to your bank statements or your cash position files. It only works with publicly available information. If you need internal data in your analysis, Deep Research isn't the tool. You're going to need Module 5 for that. Anything that requires your internal systems or proprietary data falls in the same category. Deep Research pulls from the public internet. If your question depends on your GL data or your swap portfolio or your internal policy documents, you need a different approach. And here's the big one, and I want to make sure you catch this one. Deep Research is a research assist. It is not a replacement for actual due diligence. When you use Deep Research to research a potential counterparty, a human still has to validate the output. You're reading cited sources, you're checking dates, you're making judgment calls. The AI does the legwork, but you do the thinking. Now, what about the quality of what you get back? Deep Research produces a synthesized report with citations, and the quality of those citations varies. You might get solid links to rating agency press releases. You might get links to news articles. You might get links that are thinner than you like. Always check the links, always verify the numbers, especially for anything that goes into a policy decision or a board presentation. The value of deep research isn't in trusting the output is final. The value is in the structure. It's in the starting point. It's in getting a human researcher to 80% done in 10 minutes instead of 2 hours. And that's the trade you're making. Now, how do you actually request a deep research run? Well, you don't need any special interface. In Claude, before you submit a prompt to chat, you select deep research. The prompt itself should be specific about what you're researching. Tell Claude what you need, tell Claude what format you want, tell Claude what level of detail matters. A vague prompt produces a vague research report. You're specifying the scope. So here we are back in Claude Desktop, and we're still on the Chat tab. Now, if I come down to the plus symbol down here where we would normally go to add files, this is where I can check on deep research. So now you'll see what I've enabled is I've enabled research, and we've got the blue check there. We've also got the little magnifying glass there, and I've still got web search on, and both are going to be critical. Now, for this, I highly recommend just staying on Sonnet. Because so much of this is research and synthesis, you really don't need to spend the tokens of Opus, but Haiku is also going to be too fast to really spend the time on it. Now, if the ask is really complex, you can also turn on adaptive thinking, but for this analysis, I'm just going to show you Sonnet, the middle model, with regular thinking turned on. Now we're going to go ahead and prompt in our question. Act as a Treasury expert and researcher. I need your help reviewing market conditions for an investment we are considering. Our CFO would like to go to our board of directors and evaluate taking out a loan to build 2 new coffee shop locations. We need to understand if now is a safe time to take out the loan and make this investment. Specifically, these investments would be in New York and the surrounding areas. Generate a report that is formatted and ready to share with a CFO and a board of directors. So we've got our prompt in. We're going to use this to do a market summary because I really want you to see how this does with kind of this broad ask. I'm not defining the market summary. I haven't said what I need in it. I've given it the task, the problem, and the output I'm looking for, and we're going to let it go to town so you can see just how valuable this is. So with our prompt in there, we'll go ahead and hit send. We'll let Claude do its magic. And again, this can take a little while. It's going to go do a lot of digging. And before we start, it is saying it wants to make sure the report hits exactly what we need. So what's the loan size we're considering? Do we have a target timeline for the decision? And are there any specific financial metrics your board cares most about? Okay, let's go ahead and do this. The approximate loan size we're considering would be $5 million. It would be conventional commercial real estate. We need to make the decision at a board meeting in 2 weeks. The board cares about traditional financial metrics, nothing crazy. I think all in all, those were really good questions from Claude. We'll go ahead and send those back, see if it has any more questions or if it's going to start generating. All right, that is everything it needs. It's going to kick off the deep research dive now. You'll see it's preparing to dive in. It's going to go out. It's going to start looking for sources on the internet, and we'll see how it approaches and attacks this question. So already it's been running for 13 seconds. It's found 38 sources and counting on commercial real estate, loans, report, and research. Now it's up to 58 sources in just 23 seconds. That's the power of this tool. It's going to go out and scour the internet to find so many great sources for you. Then it's going to evaluate the quality of the sources and how well they match. And then it's going to do all the synthesis all in one workflow without you having to come back. So deep research ran for 7 minutes and 11 seconds. It reviewed 58 sources. And from that, it generated our board-ready report. It covers the current interest rate environment, New York City retail market conditions. Looks like Manhattan has a record low prime availability, coffee shop economics, build-out costs, debt service modeling. There's a lot of stuff in here. And it concludes with a conditional go recommendation contingent on a couple of things and some thoughts about sequencing to reduce risk. Let's go ahead and open this document. So here it is. It generated it in an artifact, as we learned a few lessons ago. Here's our executive summary, recommendation, conditional go, right up on top like executives like it. You'll notice as we go through everything, there's a lot of data and everything goes straight to sources. This goes to trading economics. That's a good source. This goes to select commercial, another good source. World Property Journals. We've got some good sources in here. We've got some sources, Travel and Tour World, not necessarily the same level as a few others. And that's why we want to make sure we're going through and checking. But overall, they're very reputable sources that it's found. We have the Federal Reserve Outlook, recent guidance, commercial real estate conditions. There is a lot of content in here. This is a lot for 7 minutes. Imagine how long this would have taken an analyst to pull together. Coffee shop industry conditions in New York. Build up and start out cost benchmarks to make sure our financing is reasonable. We've got our key metrics for the board consideration. Full-on analysis in here going off of all the research that it did. Loan covenants to expect, risk factors. Again, we did not guide any of this. It came up with all of this really entirely on its own. Opportunity factors in the bull case, and then final recommendations and next steps. And then down here, we've got all of the key citations of where it got the data from and why it used the data sources it did. How cool is that? And that's really what you need to know about deep research. Now, the next lesson covers Cowork. Cowork is the Claude desktop app that gives Claude access to actual files on your computer. Not files you paste into a chat, files that already exist on your hard drive. Bank extracts, Excel models, template documents. Cowork reads them, works with them, and writes output files back to your local folders. That's a different kind of tool than deep research. Deep research goes out and finds current information from the public web. Cowork works with the data you already have. Two different jobs, and that's what the next lesson covers. The distinction that matters here is between Claude as a chat interface and Claude as a tool that works on your computer. Everything in the first three modules has been chat-based. You type, Claude responds. You paste data in, Claude analyzes it. That is a conversation. It has real value, but there's a ceiling. Every time you run a new analysis, you add the data again. Every time the CFO wants the same report with different numbers, you go through the whole prompt again. Cowork removes that ceiling. Cowork is built right inside the Claude desktop app. The key difference is that Cowork can access actual files on your computer. Not files you upload to a chat, files that already exist on your hard drive. Your bank statements, your Excel models, your template documents. Cowork can read them, work with them, and write output files back to your computer. You give it a task, it works on your actual files. The output shows up in your folder. The practical difference is significant. In regular Claude chat, if you want to analyze this week's bank extract, you open the file, copy the data, paste it into the chat, and run the prompt. Every time the extract comes in, you go through the sequence. Cowork skips all of that. The bank extract lands in a folder on your computer. You tell Cowork what to do with it. Cowork reads the file, runs the analysis, and writes the output. You didn't paste a single row of data. For Treasury, this changes the workflows that felt too manual to automate before. Processing daily bank extracts is the clearest example. Your bank sends a file every morning. It's a CSV or an Excel file with balances across all accounts. In the chat world, you take the data, attach it, or paste it into your briefing prompt, review the output, and download it. In the Cowork world, the file lands in a folder. Cowork reads it, Cowork runs your analysis, Cowork writes a formatted output to the same folder or a separate outputs folder. The analysis still happens, you're just not doing the manual steps in between. Batch processing across multiple files is something chat simply can't do. Say you get daily extracts from 3 banks, each in a slightly different format. Running that in Claude Chat means 3 separate manual steps. But Cowork can handle all 3 in one task. It reads each file, normalizes the format, runs the same analysis across all 3, and produces a consolidated output. 1 task, 3 inputs, 1 output. Building and updating files that live on your computer is another natural fit. You built the cache position artifact in Module 3. The output existed in Claude, not on your computer. You downloaded it, used it, and the next time you needed it, you build it again. With Cowork, you tell Claude to write the output directly to a file in your drive. Your output files accumulate. Your history stays on your computer. What does Cowork actually do under the hood? It can read files: Excel, CSV, Word, PDF. It can write files in those same formats. It can run code, which is how it transforms data. If your bank extract has columns in one order, and your report template needs them in a different order, Cowork writes the transformation and runs it. It can also organize folders, creating directories, renaming files, moving outputs to the right place. Now there's a natural question about whether Cowork requires you to be a programmer, and the answer is no. You describe what you want in plain language. Cowork figures out the technical steps. You tell it, read this Excel file and produce a cash position summary formatted this way. It handles the file reading, the data extraction, and the output formatting. You describe the task, Cowork executes it. That said, Cowork works on your computer, which means the files need to be on your computer. It is not pulling data from your bank's portal. It is not connecting to your ERP system. You have to have the files. If your current process involves manual file downloads from your bank portal, Cowork fits into that process at the point where the file lands on your machine. Everything after that download can be handled by Cowork. The workspace model is how Cowork stays contained. You give Cowork access to a specific folder on your computer. It works within that folder. It can read files in it. It can write files to it. It does not have access to your entire computer. You control what it sees. For Treasury, the practical setup is a dedicated operations folder. Subfolders for inputs, outputs, and templates and skills. Bank extracts lands in inputs. Cowork runs the analysis, output files go to outputs. That structure keeps things clean and auditable. There's also a project instructions feature. You describe a task once, save it to the workspace, and it is there every time you open Cowork with that folder. The next morning, when the new extract lands in inputs, you open Cowork and the task is already loaded. You run it, the output appears in outputs. And that's the difference between a workflow that runs once and a workflow that runs every day. Now, this is what the gap looks like in practice. Module 3 showed you how to produce consistent formatted artifacts from a prompt. The prompt was manual every time. Cowork takes that same output quality and makes the input automatic. You built the logic in Module 3. Cowork handles the daily execution. Now in the next section, I'm going to show you exactly that loop. A bank extract file on a computer, a Cowork task that reads it and runs the analysis, and a formatted output written to the outputs folder. No pasting, file in, report out. So now we're going to jump into the tool and build a full workflow with Claude Cowork. The scenario is straightforward. F9 Finance Coffee Shop received this morning's bank extract. 3 locations, 4 accounts per location. The file landed in the computer's inputs folder. No one has touched it. No one has pasted it into Claude. The task is to go from that raw file to a formatted cash position output without doing any manual data steps. So now we're going to jump back into the Claude desktop app, and for the first time, we're going to leave the chat tab up here and we're going to go over to Cowork. You don't need another application. It's all right here. Same as when we learn Claude Code in the next module. It's just one more tab over. Now, to orient you to Cowork, on first glance, it's going to look really similar to chat, but there's a couple of additional features I want to make sure you're aware of. Now, if you wanted to just start a task just like you would in Claude Chat, you can just simply hit New Task, and this window is going to come up. The difference now being that you have to tell it a folder or where it can work. Now, if you wanted to, you could certainly give it your entire documents folder. Don't do that, but you could. You can just pick any folder where you want it to work, and that's where all the work's going to live. It's not going to be in the cloud on Claude Chat. It's going to be on your computer. Then you also need to give it the ability to ask before acting or act without asking. Do you want to give approvals? When you're newer at this, you definitely want to give approvals so you get a feel for what Cowork can and can't do. As it goes on, though, as you start to understand your processes and build some guardrails around it, you may feel comfortable and move to act without asking, but that's entirely up to you. Now up here, just like in chat, we've got projects, and we're going to go in and we're going to set up a project for our cash analysis. So we'll look at that in 1 second. It's very similar to chat, but again, lives on your computer. You'll see I've already got some projects set up here. A newer feature in Cowork, and a really cool one, is that you can schedule tasks. So think about your cash position analysis, right? Before you were having to go in and manually open chat, let's say that your file is automatically downloading from your bank, it's popping into a folder, or you connect it to Google Drive. You can kick off this task automatically at a certain time every day, and that's a really cool feature. Now, we're not specifically going to cover that in this course. This is a really new feature. I want to show you how to use end-to-end to build an entire end-to-end workflow that can work right with your ERP, right with your bank systems, but good to know this is here. We have live artifacts. So we learned how to build artifacts already. Here you can build artifacts that live inside the folders on your computer and can be updated as you go and bring in new data. Cowork will often just create these as they go. You can also ask for them specifically and build your own artifacts here. Dispatch is another brand new feature. It's still in beta. It's so new. This feature allows you to take your phone and kick off tasks from your app to run in Cowork. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Again, we're not going to cover this. I don't like covering beta tools and things that need to live a long time, but know this is here, and this is just how powerful Claude's becoming. And then lastly, under Customize, we've got the connections to other applications like we saw before. We've got plugins and we've got skills, all very similar in functionality to what we learned in chat, but again, living on your computer. So first, let me go in and show you how I like to set up the structure of my Claude Cowork folders. Now, you can have Claude do this for you. I'm going to set it up just so you can see how I like to set it up, and so we can get some of our key things in here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a new folder. Now I'm inside of a Claude Cowork folder. So for my security, what I do is I have a Claude Cowork folder and I have a Claude Code folder, and all of the work I do with these tools lives under there. So this is in my Claude Cowork folder. I'm going to go ahead and hit new. I'm going to add a folder, and we're going to call this cache position. Then within that, we're going to go into cache position, and I'm going to add a couple folders in here. I'm going to have a folder called skills. We'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to have a folder called outputs. I'm going to have a folder called inputs. So we've got our inputs, our outputs, our skills, and then we can add anything else we need in here. So inputs are going to be your things like your context. That's where you can put your data in here. And then outputs are going to be where we go to get the files. And then skills will be where we add tools to help us along the way. Now, remember, we've actually already built a skill. I pulled it up here in Claude. We built a skill to show how we like our Treasury compliance reports formatted. I'm going to go to this skill. I'm actually going to download this skill. All right, so we're going to download this as a markdown. That's exactly what we're going to want. And I'm going to save this inside my new folder under skills. So we'll go to cache position, we'll go to skills, and we're going to save the Treasury compliance skill in there. Now, I saved a skill we pre-built because we've already done that work, but you can also ask Claude Cowork to build more skills as you go. But for now, we're just going to come in here, we're going to do a new project. We're going to use an existing folder. We'll go ahead and select the folder we just made. And now this is the scope. This is as far as the project can work. So you remember before, projects in Claude Chat were a collection of all of our different chats we were having. We could add context, we could add project memory. But what we're going to do here is all the work will actually be done inside this folder. And I'm going to add some high-level instructions here. So I'm going to say this project will intake data and create a daily cache position and compliance report. So we'll go ahead and create that. And now we're going to work inside this project. So you'll see our folder structure is mentioned up here. We have the chat here just like we normally have. You can have multiple tasks down here. By the way, all of these will run in the background. You don't have to stay on Claude as you run these. I've got my instructions up here. I can set up scheduled or recurring tasks. And then here's the context. Right now, the context is the memory and then everything inside the cache position folder. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to pull in the first day of bank data. I'm going to pull in our investment policy, and I'm going to pull in our thresholds. Let's go ahead and pop that back in our new file. Here's cache position. Here's our inputs, and we're ready. So now we're going to come back, and the first time you do Claude Cowork, you need to give it a little bit more context and a little bit more instruction. Once it's worked with the folder structure the first time, it usually doesn't need nearly as much prompting because it's going to start to pull those things into memory. So we've got the skills added, we've got some context added, and now we're going to build the workflow. And we can just dictate this in just like we've been doing. I need your help building a daily cache position report and compliance checker. I've given you 3 folders inside the folder. One folder of inputs has the following files. It has our minimum account balance thresholds, it has our investment policy statement, and it has 1 day of bank data. In another folder, I've given you skills, and I've given you the skill to build a format that my leadership really likes to see this report in. And third, I've given you an outputs folder. That's where you're going to generate and save the report dated with the correct date. If you need any additional information, because I know you're running this for the first time, please ask me. All right, and there's our prompt in and ready. We're going to go ahead and send this off. I'm going to leave this on ask to pause and have me approve the actions just so you can see that. We'll send this away. and we'll let Claude Cowork start doing its magic. So now this is agentic AI like we've talked about before with a few of our other skills. So this is agentic AI. That means it can run multiple steps. It can plan out its progress. And you'll see on longer tasks, it's actually going to show you the progress here. So as it plans out the tasks, you'll see those appear. Down here, we've got all the information that it's pulling out of our file. You'll see it's actually pulled in that Treasury compliance skill. We should see the data files pop in a second. And then anything being used, the context will appear down here. You'll see it's gone through the folder structure, it's reading the data files, it's pulling Python and some existing Anthropic skills to do it, and we'll keep seeing all of the work update over here. So a couple of things you see going on here. So it's gone through, it read the data files, it says it has everything it needs to process, it checked for the output folder, it found it, it's building the full report, and you'll see now it's decided to create an artifact. So it's going to build the report as an artifact, and that means within this project, within Cowork, it's not going to have to do that every single time because it's developed as an artifact, it's using the skill, it's structured it, and it's going to already know what to do when we add in another day of data and simulate rolling forward for another day. And right now what it's doing is it's constructing that in the background. And again, we could be on an entirely another part of our computer doing other work. This is all just going to keep running in the background. You can even stack up multiple Cowork tasks and just keep everything going. Now here's an example of Cowork asking for permission the first time. It's asking for permission to create the artifact it wants to create. It's telling us what it's going to build, how it's going to do it, and if we want to give it permission, we'll simply hit the create button. If we don't feel comfortable, we can hit cancel, and it would do a normal file, but we want to do this with a live artifact. So we'll go ahead and give it permission. And now you'll see the artifact panel has opened over here. Here comes in our artifact, looks darn near identical to the skill we developed because we gave it the skill. And now it's going to go into the workspace and set all this up for us. All right, so Cowork has run this process. It's saying the report is built and saved. Here's what was produced. It loaded a day of data. The compliance result was compliant. Here's the institutions. And then there's two ways to access the report. So again, we've got the live artifact open over here, but we can also go to our outputs folder. And since this is a training, let's go ahead and do that. So we were in input still, we'll go to our outputs, and there is the compliance report. And we should be able to pop this artifact open right from there. There it is, all ready to go, all ready to print. So it built us a great document, but now the test is going to be, can it reiterate and can it run this for another day? I'm going to come in here, I'm going to grab the next day of bank data. We're going to go ahead and pop that in our inputs. All right, there's the next day of data. We'll come back to Cowork. I have added the next day of bank data. Please run the process for the new data. Now you'll notice before I gave it all of that context up here, I gave it all this additional information about what the folder structure is, what I needed to do, how to incorporate the skill, but it's done all of that. It's saved all that information right in the Cowork folder. So now I'm just going to say more data is in there, do it all again. And we should get back the exact same thing, but for the next day because it has all that context. So we're sending that off, and this should also come back a lot quicker. The last process, because it was developing, took about 8 minutes. We should see this come back a lot quicker because now Cowork knows exactly what to do. So you see this time, instead of doing a lot of that constructing, it immediately ran the analysis so it knew what to build. It already found that there were some exceptions and some issues, and now it's going in to update the artifact and generate the new file. So it dove right in. Right now we're at under a minute of runtime still, so it's just going right to work. You'll see it load the tool to update the artifact, so it's working with the artifact on the right side, the live one that we can see in the window here, and it's going to go ahead and update and add our new outputs file with another report, another dated report to our folder. And again, all of this is happening right on our computer, not in Claude Chat on the cloud. So again, it's asking us for permission for the final generation. We'll go ahead and hit update, because we're working with a live artifact. And again, once we get comfortable, we can turn off ask and it will just go right to town building it for us. So it's updated the artifact, it's saving it. You'll see the date up here change from the 13th to the 14th. Our exceptions have been noted. We've got that negative balance here at our operating checking for JP Morgan Chase. We've got the additional exceptions flag down here, just like we designed when we did our skill and chat. All right, and it's been saved. Here's the day 2 summary. The sidebar has been updated. We have the 1 threshold mentioned, and the January report is ready. If we come over to our outputs file, here is our brand new report. It should look the same. Yes, it does. And that is how you set up CoWork to be able to automate your processes and keep running them day after day exactly the same way. And remember, if you wanted to, you could even set up a schedule to kick this off automatically. Now, some common questions I get on deep research and CoWork. First of all, what's the difference between deep research and regular Claude chat? Well, regular Claude uses its training data, but deep research uses current web search. If you're asking about something timely, current credit ratings, regulations, live news, then deep research is better. If you're asking for a framework or guidance that doesn't change, regular Claude is fine and faster. Now you might be wondering how accurate is deep research. Well, it pulls from real sources and it cites them. Accuracy depends on the sources it finds. That's why you verify citations. If the sources are solid, rating agency releases, SEC filings, reputable news, the output is solid. You're responsible for verification. Deep research gives you the evidence, you make the judgment. Can deep research access my internal data? No, deep research searches the public web. For analysis of your internal cache positions or GL data, you use CoWork to feed that local data to Claude. Deep research is for public information. CoWork is for your own files. Does CoWork need access to your whole computer? No, it works within a workspace folder that you specify. It can read and write files in that folder and its subfolders. It does not have any access to anything outside that workspace. You control the boundary. Now, what file formats can CoWork work with? Really just about anything where Anthropic's built the skill. Excel, CSV, Word, PDF, they're all available and ready to work with. CoWork can read from all of them and write to them as well. If your bank sends files in a different format, describe the format in your task instruction and CoWork can usually handle the parsing. Now what happens if the bank changes their file format? Well, then you can update the task instruction or just set up the AI to be dynamic enough that it can handle it. Save updated instructions, and the next time the task runs, it will be ready to go with whatever it has. You're updating a plain English description, you don't have to code in all the columns. Now, can you use CoWork without the desktop app? No, the file access and local execution require the app to be installed and running. Claude Chat in a browser does not have access to your local files. How is this different from the automation of Module 6? Well, CoWork requires you to open the app and run the task. Module 6 covers any add on the Claude API. This can schedule tasks to run automatically on a timer. You never have to touch the system. CoWork's a little bit more manual, but it's still low friction. Module 6 automation is fully hands-off. Both are valuable. This is where you start, and Module 6 is where you scale. But that's it for Module 4. Deep research covers research workflows where you need current information from the public web. CoWork covers file workflows where the data is already on your computer. 2 tools, 2 different jobs, both of them making things that were manual either faster or automatic. Now in Module 5, we're going to go further. We're going to build scripts that run on a schedule, connecting to external APIs and automating workflows that run without you opening Claude at all. Get ready for Claude Code.